right.
Good questions.
Yeah,
really good questions.
Did you think you get them all right?
No, there's several. I was like, like the last one. I know 2 out of 3, but I didn't know the third one.
Okay, so let's go ahead and go through them here, and you guys keep track of how many points you get there. Okay, so what's the last Atlanta team, #1, to win professional sports championship outside of the soccer team?
Atlanta Braves, 1995.
How many World Series did they go to in the 90s?
They went to 3, maybe, and only won 1.
Okay, yeah, they ran
lost
up against
the Twins, the Yankees. Yeah, the Yankees were doing really well.
Yeah, the Yankees were the dominant team there. Yeah. They had no question, no harm lost in that. So, all right, so it was the Braves. #2, in the 90s and 2000s, the Atlanta Braves won how many consecutive division titles?
That's what we were saying. Monty said 6.
14.
14?
14 in a row.
Wow.
It even crossed over because they were in the West at first, and then went
that's
to the
right.
East.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's 14 in a row.
I shouldn't have listened to Monty. I'm sorry. I'm not listening to you ever again.
All right, fill in the blank. Tom Glavine and Greg Maddox started a famous Nike ad. The famous line, "Chicks dig the..."
Long ball?
Long ball,
okay.
That's right. It was about them hitting home runs. Mark McGuire was in there with it. There you go. #4, who's the Braves player who hit the 715th career home run, breaking the record?
Henry Hammering Aaron.
That is right, Aaron. Henry Hank Aaron. How many points, #5, were the Atlanta Falcons up before they blew the lead?
They were up 28-3. So, in fact, I'm a lifelong Atlanta Falcons fan. I turned to my wife, Wendy, and said, honey, I cannot believe the Falcons are going to win the Super Bowl. And it went downhill from there. So.
That's right. It was a 25-point lead. I was actually in Sam's Club in Omaha, and a guy was walking through with a shirt that just said 28-3. I stopped and took a picture with him and sent it to my Atlanta fans. They were not happy with me. They haven't talked to me since.
Rude.
All right, so in 2012, National League wild card game, and this play that happened in the 8th inning, what was the rule that was called? They called them out.
They called the infield fly rule.
Infield fly rule. Anybody get that one right? Infield fly rule. That's right. And definitely the wrong call. That was ridiculous.
Awful call.
Absolutely ridiculous. All right, so who's the father-son NASCAR duo from Georgia? Remember their last name? Elliott, or if you're E.T., Elliott. That's right.
That's right.
All right, what is the name of the stadium where the Atlanta Braves played? #8, from 1965 to 1997.
Atlanta Fulton County Stadium.
Fulton County Stadium, that's what it has to do with me. #9, Muhammad Ali's real name?
Cassius Clay.
Cassius Clay, was that barbershop? Trying to remember where that big argument took place.
I think so.
Yeah.
Or was it Coming to America?
It might have been. We probably can't recommend either at this college right now, but no.
Not that I've ever watched them.
Yeah, watch the TBS version. Yeah, they're good. So, #10, Bobby Cox, Braves manager, holds the major league record for what?
Ejections.
Most times ejected from a game. Do you know how many?
I do not.
161.
Wow.
I know. He beats the nearest
issues.
one. It's almost a whole season worth of ejections. It was amazing.
We're going to miss the whole season.
All right, so Ric Flair, Georgia native. What's his nickname?
He is the Nature Boy.
The Nature Boy. How many got that right? All right, and what's his famous call?
Woo.
Oh, man. I think he can you do a better one? That's right. Woo was his famous call. And #12, name the 3 players from the Atlanta Hawks who won the NBA Slam Dunk contest.
So this was a hard one for me. Obviously Dominique Wilkins, Spud Webb, but Sayer said Vince Carter.
It was actually it was Dominique Wilkins and Spud Webb. Spud Webb was what, 5'7"?
Yeah.
Yeah, 5'7" and won the dunk contest. And then the most recent was Josh Smith. So
wow.
Josh Smith.
Wow,
all right, so there was like 15 points total out there. Did anybody get all 15 of those right? That would have been amazing if you would have. 14, 13. Did you get 14? All right, so what we have for you, since you did that, is we got you an authentic replica of the 2017 Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl championship trophy. So you can come up and collect that later on. It is right here. All right.
I'll take it back with me to Atlanta. If you want me to, Bryce.
So we are blessed to have Jeff with us today. Jeff has done a lot of things in his career so far. When I started looking at your resume, I thought, how old is this guy anyway? But
really
he's
old.
Not that old at all. He has been a marketing executive with the Atlanta Braves and with Chick-fil-A. But now he has planted 2 churches, Gwinnett Church and Buckhead Church, and is regularly called upon by churches for consulting. He's also started an organization or company called Preaching Rocket, where he has helped a number of communicators learn how to preach better through coaching them with that. And so he is very well-rounded in his giftedness when it comes to being able to speak to us today. Today he's going to speak to us about shrinking the gap, about helping our dreams become reality. So would you please welcome once again Jeff Henderson.
Thanks, Dustin. Thanks, man. Well, I'm so honored to be here. Thanks for taking time. And in Atlanta, we've built more stadiums than we've won championships. That's a hard reality to figure out. But I'm excited to be here. Here's what we're going to talk about for a few minutes today. We're going to talk about this word "for." And so I spent a number of years in the business world, and then I transitioned about 16 years ago into the church world. And so when I did that, any preachers' kids in the room? Look at us preachers' kids, and we're still involved in the church. That's amazing. So I promised myself I would never, ever work at a church as a preacher's kid. I don't know if y'all did that. I told God, I'll never, ever work at a church. So I've been working in a church for 16 years now. And if you get nothing out of what I say today, you might want to write down, never tell God you're never going to do something. I think he pays closer attention to that when you do. I recently told God, I'm never going to be a billionaire. So we'll see how he handles that one. So I developed an interest in, I didn't know that I love sports, but I didn't know that you could do sports marketing. So I started out working with the Braves and eventually went to Chick-fil-A and managed all of their regional and sports marketing and thought I would be there for the rest of my career. And let me tell you a little bit of what I did, because what I did there is going to transition a little bit into what we're going to talk about today in terms of the local church, and I think the challenges that the local church has. So part of my role at Chick-fil-A was to take sports marketing properties that they had and create opportunities for fans who came into the events to have a positive experience with Chick-fil-A so that they would do one thing, that's eat more chicken. And Chick-fil-A will this year exceed over $10 billion in sales, and this will be their 52nd year of consecutive same-store sales growth. So a lot of growth there. So there's a game at college football that Chick-fil-A sponsors, they still do to this day, called the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And so part of my role was to create opportunities for the fans to come to those games so that they would have a great experience with Chick-fil-A. So we were in the Georgia Dome. This was about 20 years ago. This is in July. The game's at the end of the year. And our team is scheduled, we're there, we're trying to figure out what can we do to create a positive brand experience for fans coming to the games. And this was in the Georgia Dome. We recently blew up the Georgia Dome in Atlanta like we typically do. And there was a cup holder at the stadium. And I noticed, I thought, what if we could do this? What if we could we had these little eat more chicken cows. What if we could put these cows in the cup holders of the stadium? 72,000 cup holders and 72,000 cows. That's a pretty cool idea. People come to the games. They already are getting a message that says eat more chicken. Well, I didn't have money in my marketing budget to pay for 72,000 cows, but I knew someone who did. His name was Truett Cathy, and he didn't invent the chicken, but he invented the chicken sandwich, and he was the founder of Chick-fil-A. So I got in my car, I went back to the headquarters, I knocked on the door and walked into Truett's office, and I said, Truett, I got an idea. And I said, so here's my idea. I don't have it in my marketing budget, but rumor has it that your 401k is fully funded, and so what I would like for you to do is to write a check to buy 72,000 cows. Now, Truett was a billionaire, but he was very frugal. So we had a good conversation, and he said, Jeff, do you think we ought to do this? I said, yes, sir, I think you ought to do that. And so he decided to do it. He wrote a check, and I bought 72,000 cows. Now I got to figure out, as we get closer to the game, how do you actually get 72,000 cows in a cup holder? How long is that going to take? As my wife, Wendy, says, you're wow, but you're not how. You have absolutely no idea how to do any of these ideas, right? So it took us about 3 days to get these cows in the cup holders. So fast forward to the day of the game. It's the New Year's Eve. It's the University of Georgia versus the University of Virginia, sold out Georgia Dome. And so I'm standing in the press box wanting to see what the fans' reaction to these cows are. And so people are loving them. It's awesome. And I'm thinking, whose idea was this, by the way? Oh, it's my idea. Thank you very much. This is awesome. I had no idea that disaster was about to strike. So the game begins. It's 7-0 Virginia. They score first. They get the ball back. They score again 14-0. And then before the end of the first quarter, they score again. It's 21-0 Virginia, and we're not even out of the first quarter. And the Georgia fans are thinking, are we going to get blown out in this game? So Georgia gets the ball back. They're headed toward their end zone. They get inside the 20-yard line, but an official, kind of like that infield fly rule, Dustin, drops a penalty flag, effectively ending the drive, and the fans in the Georgia stands go nuts and just lose their minds. And there's a guy that looks at his cup holder and he sees a cow. And you know what he does? He takes his cow and he throws it onto the field, all right? And guess what happens next? 20,000, yeah, y'all are smarter than I was. 20,000 of his closest friends, they throw their cows on the field, and I see my marketing career flash before my eyes. And y'all, they had to delay the game to sweep all the dead little cows off of the Georgia Dome field, right? And I know you've had a bad day at school or you've had a bad day at work, but I bet your bad day has never been broadcast nationally on ESPN like mine was. And so rather than go to commercial break, no, we got to stay locked and loaded on this marketing disaster. And so one of the commentators said, who was the marketing genius that came up with this idea? And so as a result of all that, I became a pastor. That's how I got into church work. Now, I'm standing there thinking this is horrific, and my boss comes up to me, and you know what he's going to say, right? It's two words. It rhymes with "you're tired," right? Because this is our founder spent a lot of money on this, and now there's this marketing disaster. But David comes up, and he sees things differently. And what I'm going to ask you to do today is I'm going to ask you to look and see things differently. And how you view things really determines how you do things. And whether, I'm asked as a pastor a lot, do you think things are getting better or do you think things are getting worse? The answer to that is yes. It just depends on how you view things. So my boss comes up and he goes, Jeff, I know he's about to fire me. He goes, Jeff, this is amazing. This is awesome. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? This is a disaster. He goes, no, the publicity value we're going to get out of this is amazing. And at that conference, I feel like God spoke to me. You know, I can't say that God's spoken audibly to me, but as a mentor says, God speaks louder than that. I felt like God said, you're going to help start a church someday. So 3 years later from that moment, I resigned from Chick-fil-A. This was 16 years ago, and I helped start a church in Atlanta called Buckhead Church. And as Dustin said, so we're part of North Point Ministries in Atlanta, Georgia. And so did that, and then we started 2 other churches in Gwinnett County, which is where I'm from, in North Atlanta. And so I have this kind of weird career I went into marketing, and now I'm in church world. And what I've discovered, though, is that there's a lot that the business world can learn from the church world, but there's a lot that the church world and the nonprofit world can learn from the business world. So what I want to do is I want to share with you some things that I think we as church leaders and nonprofit leaders could learn from the business world. And if you hear my presentation today and you're like, this sounds like a marketing guy's presentation, you're right, it is. But here, if I can push this a little bit, and I know the church isn't a business, I understand this. I know the church isn't marketing, I get that, I totally get that. But if I could put on my marketing hat for just a moment, I think the church has a brand image problem. And here's why, and we're gonna talk about this. For many people are more familiar with what the church is against rather than what the church is for. And I want to talk about the opportunity that you and I have as church leaders to change that, because here's my perspective. We have, hands down, the greatest message the world has ever heard, will ever hear, and we get to be stewards of it. And as a result of that, I think there's a stewardship opportunity for you and for me to lean into this world and tell them the best news that they have ever heard, that God has sent his son into this world because he loves us. In fact, I could argue that the most famous Bible verse of them all starts with this word, for God so loved the world. So what I'm going to challenge us to do for a few minutes is simply this today. In a hypercritical, cynical world, often known for what it's against, let's be a community of people known for what we're for. And I love this word, for. You know what it means? It means to be in favor of. This is my favorite definition of this word, to be in favor of. And so this verse that I mentioned that you know very well, John 3:16, it starts with these 2 words. In essence, to say, we're gonna let you know who and what God is for. And this is John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. Gang, here's the deal. This message, here's our goal. And students, if you're gonna go into church work, here's, from a former chicken guy, here's what I think you should do. This message here, here's a goal. We just have to stay on message. That's all we gotta do. This message is it's amazing. It sounds too good to be true that, hold on, there's a God that is for me and that loves me. I mean, we've been given an extraordinary opportunity to simply stay on this message. And if it wasn't just this, there's the amazing thing. It actually keeps going, because the next verse, I mean, John 3:16 gets a lot of publicity. John 3:17, not so much. It's just as good. John 3:17 says, "For God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him." Now, let me tell you why I think the church has a brand image problem. All right, look at John 3:17 for a second. "For God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world." But many people are more familiar with what the church is against rather than what the church is for. How did we get there? We've got these two amazing verses, these two amazing invitations. I think this is a stewardship opportunity for us. And as a result of this is why I'm here to say today, we simply got to stay on message. We simply got to stay on message. So how do we stay on message? How do we reach people? Students, if you feel like, and I believe this, you may not believe this about you, but let me just tell you what I think about you. I believe God has a calling on your life. I believe God has a calling on your life. And one of the callings I think that God has on your life is to share with your generation that God is for them. So how do we do that, all right? So if I can, let me put a pin in that, and can we talk marketing for a second? Because some of you, let me tell you that some of you might not go into church work, but you might go into business, and you know what that is? That's still ministry. People ask me, when did I decide to go into full-time ministry? Well, I was already in full-time ministry. And that wasn't just because I was working at Christian Chicken, right? I mean, I was already in full-time ministry when I was a busboy at Peachtree World of Tennis when I was a senior in high school. So this idea that if you go into the business world, you're not in full-time ministry, that's not theologically correct. But all that to say, I want to talk a little bit about marketing. And here's why this is true for those of you that are in the nonprofit world. Here's the amazing thing about nonprofits. By the way, one of the things, students, you need to realize is if you're gonna be successful in nonprofit world, you're gonna have to learn how to raise money. And I wanna talk to you about how to do that today, all right? And here's the reality for all of us nonprofit leaders. Our future vision is here, and our current resources are here. This is the tension that we feel. But this is what I share with church leaders in particular. If your future vision's here and your current resources are here, you're actually on the right track. Let me tell you something that's far worse than this. It's when your future vision's here and your current resources are right here. If this is the reality, the end is near. The end is near. It's got to be like this. That said, we can't stay like this. We have to shrink the gap. How do you shrink the gap? I want to talk to you about how to do that. So whether it's fundraising, whether it's growing your church, whether it's growing your organization, however it is that you determine what growth looks like. Here's the thing, when I talk about growth in the church, there are a variety of different ways that looks, all right? So one way a church grows might be different from a way another church grows. That's cool, but growth is important because healthy things grow, unhealthy things die. So how do we grow things, all right? So let's talk about marketing for just a second, if I can. And I'm going to parlay that back into church world, okay? So I'm going to a little bit of a journey. To do that, I want to talk about this. It's called the other box. Let me tell you what the other box is. You've probably been asked a question from a business. Hey, how did you hear about us? How did you hear about our business? How did you hear about our school? This would be great for Nebraska Christian College to understand. How did you hear about our organization or business? And so they typically list a lot of answers, boxes for you to check. Television, radio, social media, billboard, and this final box is the other box. And do you know which box gets checked the most? It's the other box. And it drives marketing people like me crazy. And here's why. We can't control the other box. And you know what the other box is? It's positive word of mouth advertising. It's when people say something about your organization to their friends, all right? So when I was a student, I went to the University of Georgia. I majored in advertising. Perfect correlation to being a pastor, right? Advertising. And so advertising 101, the professor says, hey, we all know that positive word-of-mouth advertising is the most powerful form of advertising there is for any organization. We don't know how to figure that out, so we're going to spend the rest of the semester on paid advertising, right? And I kind of wanted to raise my hand and go, I don't think it has to be that complicated. I think there's a way to figure this out. So let me tell you why this is important for the church world. This is really important for church planters. If you ever want to plant a church, you have to understand this. If you were to say, Jeff, we will give you an unlimited budget to create the most amazing website in the world, or we will give you 50 people who will passionately invite people to church, which would you take? Hands down, I'm taking these 50 people right here. And here's why. This is, and I'm talking business, but trust me, we're going to come back to why this is important for the church and nonprofit world. A business is no longer what it tells customers it is. A business is what customers tell other customers it is. This is the game. You know what this is? This is positive word-of-mouth advertising. So I can tell you that I have the best hot dog stand in town, but if you come to my hot dog stand and you don't think that's true, and you go and tell others about it, you win. I don't. And I can spend all of my effort, all of my energy, all of my money on paid advertising, but Yelp ultimately wins. Why is that? Because customers have the greatest voice of influence. Students, this is incredibly important to understand, and here's why. When you have a group of people who talk passionately about your organization, your church, your business, your school, they're able to reach people that you can't reach at a fraction of the cost, and they have more influence than you do. Because you and I have a vested interest. If you were in Atlanta, and if I were to tell you, come to Gwinnett Church, it's the best church, that's what I'm supposed to say. But when someone in my church says, no, will you come to Gwinnett Church with me? I promise you, I think you're going to like it. There's an added credibility there. And when it comes to growing our organizations, here's what we need. We need what I call vision carriers. And the more vision carriers you have, the more vision casters you have. What's a vision carrier? A vision carrier is people that do just what I talked about, that carry your vision into their social media network, into their Facebook followers, into their Instagram followers, and go, oh, you ought to try this. This organization is amazing. I love this organization. You should go to Nebraska Christian College. They're amazing. Those are vision carriers. And the more vision carriers you have, the more vision casters you have. That's why if you gave me 50 people who are passionate about my church and will tell others about that church, you know what those people are? They're vision carriers. And my responsibility, one of my responsibilities as a leader, is to equip the vision carriers to share the message with their friends. And visions like this, visions like a bucket of water. And vision's a very biblical thing, you know this. But vision's like a bucket of water. The more words in the bucket, the more they'll spill out. You have to have enough that you can carry on to the vision carriers so the vision carriers can take it and pass it on to their network of people. This is how things grow. So what I want to do, I want to teach you how this works. And students, I wish someone had taught me this when I was your age. If you can figure this out, and this, by the way, this isn't something I came up with. This is something I experienced. Let me tell you how I've experienced this. For the last 22 years, I've been up close to two organizations that have grown very rapidly, North Point Ministries and Chick-fil-A. And so people ask me, hey, what's the biggest difference between working at Chick-fil-A and working at North Point Ministries? Well, the biggest difference is really easy to answer. The biggest difference is now as a pastor, I'm open on Sundays. Chick-fil-A is closed on Sundays, okay? So there's that. But there are actually more similarities. And if you were to say, Jeff, what caused those two organizations to grow? Here's what I would tell you. And you would say, if you were to say, Jeff, you can only put it and like boil it down to a couple of questions. Here are the two questions that I would give you. In my perspective, is that these two questions that I'm going to give you, they'll help grow your organization. They'll help grow your church if you want to grow. If you don't want to grow, cool, you don't have to do this. But if you do want to grow, not just your organization, but if you want to grow you, then these two questions will help. And these are two questions that I've observed over the last 22 years that these organizations have asked in one form or another. So you may see this today and say, well, Jeff, my organization, we don't want to grow. Okay, well, you need to. You need to grow, all right? So we're going to come we're actually going to end on you today. And these two questions, they're not just true for your church or your school or your organization that you someday want to launch. These two questions, they're helpful for you to know as well, all right? So 2 questions, all right? Question number one. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known for? And I want to push you a little bit, okay? I want to push you. Can I push you a little bit? Let me say something that you might disagree with. By the way, the answer to any question is Jesus, all right? Okay? I love Jesus. I serve Jesus. I work for Jesus. I'm on Jesus. But I want to push us a little bit. The easy box to check is we want to be known for Jesus. And that is true. I'm not arguing that, okay? But for those who would say in our communities, that's not interesting to me, then we still have some work to do. What I mean by that is how can we create common ground with people who wouldn't answer that question the same way that we do? And I think we have a responsibility there. I'll explain what that looks like in just a second. But when it comes to this question, let me talk to you about it from a business standpoint, and then we're going to talk about it from a church standpoint. When there's confusion about this question, when a business doesn't understand or isn't clear about what it wants to be known for, here's what happens. When there's confusion in the office space, there's confusion in the marketplace. No question about it. If the team doesn't understand what we're trying to do, if the team doesn't understand what are we trying to be here for, if the team doesn't understand the problem, what is the problem that we have been gathered together to solve, then the people out in the community, they're certainly not going to know. So let me give you a couple of the business examples to show you how hard this is and how powerful this is. One is called an organization called Zappos. Zappos sells shoes online. Anybody bought shoes from Zappos? Yeah, a few of us. Zappos went in 10 years, they went from 0 sales to $1 billion in sales in 10 years. They were recently bought by Amazon, like we all will be one day, right? And so if you had the opportunity to go out to their headquarters and you see this thing that they want to be known for, and do you know what they want to be known for? They want to be known for delivering happiness. What does that even mean? I mean, you're there to sell shoes. That's what you do. But Tony Hsieh would say, no, that's not what we do. We deliver happiness. And when you walked around the building, you saw these 2 words all over the place. Deliver happiness, deliver happiness, deliver happiness. It was even in the men's restroom, which is a little odd. Deliver happiness all over the building, okay? You know what that is? Leaders are repeaters. Leaders are repeaters. You have to say it over and over and over again. And when you figure out everybody has already heard it, you say it over and over again. You have to stay on message. So I went to the call center at Zappos, and they introduced me to what they described as a legend in the call service. And I said, okay, why is she a legend from this call center? You know what the call center does, right? You call in, they answer the phone, and they try to sell you shoes so that they can get off the phone and go to the next customer. But that's not how Zappos works, because they're here to deliver happiness and great customer service. So this particular lady, they said she's a legend because she was on the phone one time for 6 hours with one customer. Like, 6 hours? What did y'all talk about? She said, well, in the course of the conversation, I could tell that she wasn't doing very well. So I asked the question, are you okay? And the lady said, I'm not, actually. She said, my husband just recently died, and I'm really struggling. Well, the person on the other end could relate to that because her husband had passed away too. And in that moment, they started talking for the next 6 hours. Interestingly enough, the person on the other end of the phone didn't even end up buying shoes. So rather than criticize this lady, you didn't sell a pair of shoes and you were on the phone 6 hours, they elevated her and said, you know what, you're a legend and we celebrate you. Because what they knew is when that lady wants shoes, she's gonna call back to Zappos. That's one of the reasons they went from 0 to $1 billion in sales in 10 years. The point is this, when the team clearly understands what we wanna be known for, it's powerful. Now, let me give you an example, and not being critical, I actually really like this organization, Burger King, all right? I know it might sound blasphemous as a former Chick-fil-A guy to say I eat more beef. I like Burger King, okay? But let me show you how this is hard and how it's easy to drift off message, all right? So one of my marketing heroes in Atlanta is a guy by the name of Al Ries. Al wrote a book called Focus. If you are interested in marketing, I would recommend that book. And he was hired by Burger King to help improve their chicken sandwich sales, all right? So Al, the first day of the meeting begins and he raises his hand. And he goes, I have a question. And they said, okay. He goes, can we go outside? And they're like, well, okay, this is a little weird. So they all walk outside and they gather around the big Burger King sign that says Burger King headquarters. And so Al says, hey, on the count of 3, I'm gonna count us down and I want us to say the name of the company out loud, okay? So everybody's looking at him like, this is really odd. So he counts it down, 3, 2, 1, and they all say, Burger King. And Al goes, exactly, you're the king of burgers. Here's my question. Why are you selling chicken sandwiches? And that was the last day Al worked on the Burger King account. But the point is really this. The point is this. Hey, you can't be known for everything, but you do need to be known for something. And as a church pastor, it bothers me that the church is known for many people, not all, but for many people, more for what it's against than what it's for. So students, you want to launch a church someday? What do you want your church to be known for? All right? What's the language? What's the vision carrying that your volunteers, your vision carriers can carry into the community? The second question, while this first question is yours, the second question actually isn't yours. The second question is, what are you known for? What are you known for? What's your organization known for? Now, let me put these 2 questions on the board here, and let me tell you why these 2 questions are so important. This is really, really important. If you want to grow, when the answers to these 2 questions match, when what you want to be known for is what you're actually known for, something powerful happens. You create a sales force for free. You get people talking about your business. You get people talking about your organization. You get people talking about this because if you have a unique, compelling vision and people are experiencing that, then what you want to be known for is what you're known for, then you leverage the other box. So what I want to do, I want to share with you how we've tried to implement this in our church. I've mentioned this already, but when it comes to this, many people are more familiar with what the church is against rather than what the church is for. What we decided is we want to be known for what we're for. So and I'm not telling you to do something that I haven't already done. So 8 years ago when we launched our church, we said, hey, what do we want to be known for? Definitely Jesus. But when it comes to that, here's the issue. There's this guy right here. This guy on the couch. This guy on the couch is not just a guy. He represents families and women and ladies and teenagers and students, but he's not against the church. It's just the church isn't a category for him. But here's what I believe. I believe God loves him. I believe Jesus died for him. And what I want to do is I want to let him know that the church has more in common with him than he might think. And all I'm trying to do as a team, all our team is trying to do is to get him to just turn around and consider the possibility that the message of the local church is completely applicable and relevant to his life. So what I've told our team is that what I want to do is simply have him turn around and shrink the gap between this person. Now, here's the deal. I knew when we bought the property this property that we have at our church, the city that we're in said, hey, you could put a sign up that says Gwinnett Church coming soon. And we have a sign there now that says Gwinnett Church. But the first introduction to the community, I didn't want that sign to say that. And you know why? It's because of this guy. I knew that he was going to be driving, but our church is on this very well-traveled road, and I wanted him to wonder what the sign was that we put up. And so we put this sign up on the road outside of our church. It simply said #4Gwinnett. There's no website. It didn't say John 3:16. It just said #4Gwinnett. And I got pushback from people on our team that said, hey, how are they going to know it's a church? To which I said, exactly, they're not. Then we gave t-shirts to our little core of volunteers. This is 100 volunteers at the time. And I said, I want you to go into the grocery stores, in the restaurants, into the ballparks, into the community, and just wear your 4Gwinnett shirt on. And here's what's going to happen. Because when bulldozers show up in an organization or bulldozers show up on a land, people go, I wonder what that's going to be. And so when people come up to you and say, hey, 4Gwinnett, there's a sign up there that says 4Gwinnett, what does that mean? Here's what I want you to say. that, well, because they're gonna say, is it a school? Is it a residential subdivision? We got all these kind of questions about what's it gonna be, and say, no, tell them it's a church. And then they're gonna say, well, why does it say for Gwinnett? And I want you to say, well, the reason it says for Gwinnett is many people are more familiar with what the church is against. We want to be known for what we're for. We believe God is for you. Gang, those conversations grew our church. In fact, a funny thing happened. People started stopping by and getting their picture next to the sign. This is one of them. This gentleman posted online, my part-time job is holding up the For Gwinnett sign, okay? People would just start posting these messages online. And you know what these are? These are vision carriers. But when they began to understand, hold on, time out. Is it possible? You mean God might actually love me? You mean it's possible that God might actually be for me? There's something in people. I think it's the thumbprint of God that wants to believe that God loves them and God's for them, and they are drawn to that message like they are drawn to Jesus. And so this happened all the time. And so what we want to be about, and what I want to encourage you to do, is basically we want to say yes to people who said no. We want to say yes to people who've said no to what we believe. We want to say yes to people who've said no to the church. We want to say yes to people who said no to Jesus. And here's why. Something powerful happens when people who said no to church realize the church is still saying yes to them. In other words, hey, by the way, at my church, do you know that Gwinnett Church, can I just say this, pick on our church? Do you know that we're not a perfect church? Did you know that? And you know why we're not a perfect church? It's because I'm there, all right? And so what I want, I shared this with our church just the last couple of weeks, that I believe the church should be full of delightful people. This word delightful, I love this word. I think it ties directly to the calling that Jesus has on us, which it says, you are like the light of the world. Delightful simply means to be full of light. I believe the church should be full of delightful people who have not recovered yet from the grace of God. When you have a group of delightful people full of the light of Jesus and they still haven't gotten over the fact that they're forgiven, that God's mercy is available to them, that they're a son or daughter of God, if there's that tenderness in their heart, that church is on the potential of great things. But when a group of people are pretty angry and crusty and have forgotten their own forgiveness story, there's a lid on the potential of the church. And can I just venture out? This may be the last time you ever ask me to do this. Come here. It's shocking to me how rude Christian leaders are to other Christian leaders online. I mean, things that have happened recently, I'm just like, we've got to be smarter than this, because the world is watching. And what the world sees among Christian leaders being rude to each other online, I'm thinking, why would I want to be a part of that if that's what being a Christian is all about? We got to be smarter than that. And that's what this is about. But ultimately what this means for you and me is that we've got to be people who are delightful people who haven't recovered from our own story of forgiveness and grace and redemption. In fact, one of the reasons, Monty, God's going to blow up your church is because you've mentioned to me your past several times. You know what that is? You haven't recovered from the fact that God's forgiven you from your past. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget that. That's huge. That's a gift from God. So how do you do this? Well, I want to talk about I'm going to wrap up with this. I'm going to give you a quick strategy. The two questions, what do you want to be known for and what are you known for? The reality for Nebraska Christian College, the reality for Chick-fil-A, the reality for Gwinnett Church is that there's a gap. There's a gap. And you know why? Because there's no perfect organization on the planet. For example, I love Chick-fil-A, but someone in the world today will be served cold waffle fries, all right? So it's not about perfection, it's about shrinking the gap. And I'm not here to tell you what you need to be known for. That's between you and the organization and you and your future dreams. I'm just saying when you figure that out, you gotta shrink the gap. And to do that, you've gotta be for four groups of people. I call this 4 for 4. And I'm gonna fly through this and we'll let you go. But basically, it looks like this. There's for the customer, or attender, or participant in your nonprofit, for the team, for the community, and for you. And again, I want to shift a little bit into marketing in business for a second if I can. But typically, when you look at this, business leaders would go, yeah, Jeff, we got that. We already do that. But typically they don't. And here's why. Here's what this looks like. These four are here to serve the business because the sole focus is the business. And the line here is that if a business was a person, many businesses would be considered narcissists. Because look, their messaging is, look how great we are, look how wonderful we are. This isn't how things are going in the future. This isn't just true for business. I actually think it's true for churches. This is why when I work with churches, we actually go to their Instagram page and we count the last 10 Instagram posts. And I ask them, how many of these posts of the last 10 are about what's happening inside the four walls of the church? And how many posts are about what's happening in the community? And I'm not saying we have to stop talking about the church. I'm simply saying there needs to be a balance. Sometimes in church world, it's hard to reach people because we're too busy talking about ourselves. And organizations too often forget the social in social media. So basically it needs to look like this, that the business or church or organization needs to be serving these four groups of people because thriving organizations of the future will be less concerned with creating fans of the organization and more concerned with becoming a fan of the customer. So let me show you how this works real quick. I'm gonna give you just a couple of quick strategies. And this is true. If I could talk to nonprofits for a moment about their social media strategy, this is true for businesses as well. Let's put more social in the social media. What I mean by this is less post and more dialogue with people in the community. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. My daughter Jessie is a big fan of the musical group Johnny Swim. I don't know if y'all have heard of Johnny Swim. I have not. I thought they were Olympic swimmers, but apparently it's a really good musical group. And before she went back to college this past June, my wife said, well, hey, what if we get 4 tickets and we go to the Johnny Swim concert? I said, well, that's a great idea. And she said, hey, for $50 extra a ticket, we could buy a backstage pass. And Jessie, we could go meet Johnny Swim. And I said, well, I'm not good at math, but 50 times 4 is $200, and we're already spending a lot on college education. I don't think we should do that, okay? So maybe not a good dad moment, but Dave Ramsey would be proud. So we didn't buy the $200. So my daughter was featured on an organization that she was working on. They said, this is Jessie Henderson. She's an intern. She likes this kind of food. She likes this. She likes this. And she's obsessed with Johnny Swim. And they tagged Johnny Swim in the post. Well, a few hours after posting this, my daughter texts me on my phone on our little family text thread with a screenshot of a picture of a social media post, that particular post, with the initials OMG. She's a preacher's kid. That stands for oh my gosh, right? And so she said, Dad, look at this. You know what happened? Johnny Swim saw that post and they commented back to Jessie and said, we are obsessed with you too, Jessie. We love you. And her friends they saw it, and her friends started blowing it up. And oh my goodness, Johnny Swim noticed me, all right? And guess what happened? We bought the backstage passes, all right? And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Jeff, this is a preacher story. This didn't really happen. Well, here's a picture of that moment, all right? This is Johnny Swim. This is the backstage pass. Do you know why they're smiling? It's because they're $200 richer, all right? And do you know why this happened? It happened with one single click of a button. Let me show you how this works. Students, telling you, even with TikTok and everything else that's going on, I know things are changing rapidly, but I'm telling you, if you can get more personable with the people you're trying to reach, the better. Here's what happened. Johnny Swim, did they need to tell us when their new CD's coming out? Absolutely. Do they need to tell us when their tour dates are? Absolutely. But what they did, most organizations aren't doing. Don't miss this. They left their platform and they dialogued with one of their fans there. And in that moment, they got really personable. And the more personable, the more remarkable you'll be. And guess what happened? Here I am at Nebraska Christian College as a vision carrier of Johnny Swim just because of one click of a button. Some of you have never heard of Johnny Swim. And they're not paying me, and they should, okay? That's the point. The point is, I'm a vision carrier because they got really personable with me, all right? There's all kind of strategies in this, but that's just one. But here's one that I'm really passionate about, is for the team. And here's why I'm passionate about this. This isn't just true for church, it's true for nonprofits. But as a preacher's kid, I've been in church all my life. Here's a reality about church. The church is often a terrible place to work. And when the church is a terrible place to work, it's a terrible place to serve and attend. And no wonder a lot of churches struggle. So one of the things we have to do is understand, how do you create a for the team culture? And I'm not going to go through this diagram. It's in the book that I wrote. But basically this is, if you were to ask me, how do you create a culture that's for the team that flows to the people in the organization? I would say you do these 5 things and you do these consistently. Let me tell you why this is so important. And let me just pick on the fast food industry. Or not pick on, I'm just giving you an example. And you know this. When you walk into a restaurant and you walk up to the counter, I can tell, and you can do this as well, but when I walk up to the counter, I can tell exactly how the person behind the counter is being treated. You know how? Because it's flowing right to me. So if I walk up to the counter and the person doesn't give me eye contact, and he or she kind of thinks that I'm bothering her and doesn't really care and is kind of flippant with the order, you know what that tells me? It tells me that this is how she's being treated behind the counter, and it's flowing to me. When I walk up to the counter and I get a smile, which doesn't cost anything, by the way, and the natural human reaction when somebody smiles, you smile back, and I'm walking up to the counter and somebody's already smiling, I'm already feeling good. I might supersize my order now, right? And so they're smiling, they're engaged with me. Then that says to me, this is how they're being treated. Students, one of the things you've got to understand is the culture of the organization you are going to create is more important than the product. Because you can have the best product, but if the culture is bad, it will undermine the product. There's a famous marketing or management consultant, Peter Drucker, who used to say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can have the best strategy in the world, the best worship services, the best organization, the best college, but if the culture isn't healthy, just give it a little bit of time. The culture will undermine all of that. So I'm not going to go into all of this other than to say that these 5 strategies, believe abundantly, appreciate consistently, develop intentionally, listen actively, and live repeatedly. What I've discovered in my business and church career, if you'll do this consistently, it will create a for the team culture. For the community. This is what we should get right in the church and nonprofit world. Let's start talking less about ourselves and more about the community. So for us, what we do at Gwinnett Church, and this is really simple and it doesn't cost hardly any money, is every Friday we do on Instagram, we do something called For Gwinnett Friday. And we feature a local business in our community. This is Carissa Norfleet. Carissa owns a little donut shop in our community. It's called Simply Done Donuts. Carissa used to work for AT&T, but she decided, you know what, I don't think I like this job. And I've always wanted to own my own donut shop. And so you know what she did? She got a business loan and she launched her donut shop. So I would drive by this and see them, open. I saw them opening up the store. So one day I went in and I just introduced myself and said, hey, I'm Jeff. Tell me about your business. Tell me about your story. She told me about her story. And I said, well, how are things going? She goes, well, it's going good. A lot of people don't understand. People think that I'm rich because I own my own business. They don't understand that I'm actually in a lot of debt from a business standpoint. And I said, well, I work at a church. I said, could we help you? And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, could we post about your store and just ask people from our church to go to your donut shop and support you? And she said, well, sure. And I love this question. She goes, but why are you doing this? What do you want in return? Does this cost any money? And I said, does it cost anything? We just want to help you because we believe that if you run a good business in our community, it's a way for us to create a greater community. Because by the way, we live here too. And the more thriving businesses we have, the better our community is going to be. So we just want to post and tell people to come to your store. And then she said, okay, why are you doing this? Because it's a really good thing to do. So she said, okay, so we posted this. We encouraged everybody to go to her business. And that month, she was having a really bad month, she had her best month ever. Now, here's the story. It's not because she goes to our church. She and her husband, Joey, they've come once in 2 years. I hope they do. In fact, I was texting with her this morning. She has a business issue that we were talking about. But that's not why I do this. The reason I want to do this is to let her know we're for you. Now, I get pushback from church leaders who go, gosh, we have a lot of businesses. We can't do this for everybody. That's right. But that's why I love what Andy Stanley says. Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. I can't do this every single day, but you know what I can do? I can do it every single Friday. Every Friday, for Gwinnett Friday, for Gwinnett Friday, for Gwinnett Friday. And it's a church using its platform not to talk about us, but to talk about the community. That's where this thing's going, all right? And the final one is this one, and then we're done. This is probably the most important one. For you. This might seem a little odd to be talking about being for others and for the community and for the team and go, but you got to be for you. But here's why. The best gift you can give your church, your organization, is a healthy, inspired you. So let me go back to these two questions. And I talked to you about it from an organization standpoint. I want to close with this. I want you to think of these two questions and ask yourself this. What do you want to be known for? And then the second question isn't for you to answer. It's actually the people in your life that get to answer it. For example, if I'm here to tell you, Dustin, I want to be known for being an incredible husband. Dustin, I want to be known for being an incredible dad. Do you know who Dustin has to ultimately go to get the answers to that question? It ain't me. He's got to go to my wife. He's got to go to my kids. He's got to go to the people that I work with. And I can talk a good game, but ultimately the people in my life, they're the ones that are going to answer that. Now, can I give you a couple of ways that I answer this question? And again, the right answer is Jesus, right? Totally got that. But let me get a little bit more specific than that. One of the ways I answer this question is I want to be known for being for the person right in front of me, whoever that is at the moment. That could be the barista at the coffee shop. It could be Carissa at Simply Done Donut. It could be Monty. Whoever is in front of me, I want that person to know I'm locked in and I am for you in that moment. When we go out to eat, maybe it's because I spent a number of years in the restaurant industry, I have to get to know the waiter and waitress's name. And I say it over and over and over again, much to the chagrin of my kids. They hate this, all right? But here's what I tell my kids. This person, I want to honor them because, hey, don't forget this. These people we're sitting down and they're bringing us food. What a great country, okay? So don't forget that. And I want to honor them. So whoever is in front of me, I want to be for them. Another way to answer this question for me is Jesus said, when I return to the earth, will I find faith? So the way I answer this is, what do I want to be known for? I want to be known for being found faithful. So if Jesus were to come back today and come up to my wife, Wendy, and say, Jeff wants to be found as a faithful, passionate, loving, great husband, is that true? Am I being found faithful in all of the areas of my life? And let me just tell you, let me just pick on me. Am I being perfect in every area of my life? No. But every single day is an opportunity for me to shrink the gap. And one of the ways you shrink the gap is to remain inspired. So let me ask you, students, leaders, how inspired are you right now? And do you know whose responsibility it is for you to remain inspired? It's yours. So let me give you one strategy to remain inspired. I'm going to show you a picture, and then we're done. One of the ways that you remain inspired is to consistently ask big. Ask big. Ask and dream big. What do I mean by that? I'll give you an example. My daughter Jessie, when she graduated from high school, by the way, I have a son. I love him too. Okay, no stories about my son today. When she graduated from high school, we were preparing for that, and I said, honey, let's go somewhere to celebrate. We can go somewhere within reason. And she said, well, Dad, what if we went out to San Francisco? And I thought, well, that would be great. Let's go out to San Francisco. And then I realized, oh, wow, that's where the Pixar movie studios are. And that was important for us because we grew up, when the kids were younger, we watched Pixar movies all the time. You know, Toy Story and Finding Nemo and all those. And I'd met Ed Catmull, the president of Pixar, a couple years ago, got my picture, for 10 seconds with him. And I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to write him a letter and ask him when we're on the graduation trip if we could come by and get a private tour of the Pixar studios. How cool would that be? So I knew he wouldn't remember me, so I wrote a letter and I printed out the picture. And I said, "Dear Mr. Catmull, this is Jeff Henderson. We met a couple years ago. I know you don't remember this, but here's a picture to let you know I'm telling the truth. My daughter graduated from high school, about to graduate from high school. Could we come out to tour Pixar?" All that. And while I'm writing this letter, I'm thinking, how cool would this be? Do you know what? There's another voice in my head. By the way, do you talk to yourself like I do? Okay, good. There's another voice in my head that's going, this is a complete and total waste of your time. Don't you have anything better to do? You're spending good money on a postage stamp that is completely wasted here. Oh my goodness, this would be amazing if my family got a private tour of Pixar. This is a complete and total waste of your time. Students, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your daily life. Because this voice will try to convince you not to listen to this voice. And I'm here to tell you, if you're going to shrink the gap between those two questions, you can't listen to this voice. It'll talk you down. So I mailed the letter, put it in the mailbox, and this was in February, all right? And it's kind of like putting a letter in a bottle and throwing it in the ocean, because you have absolutely no idea if you'll ever hear back. And I didn't hear back. So what do you do in those moments when you don't hear back? You got to keep asking. You got to keep asking big, because guess what? I didn't hear back from Pixar until 4 months later. 4 months later, I get a call from Oakland, California. I don't know anybody from Oakland, California, so I just hit click, didn't listen to it. Later that night, I noticed that I got a voicemail from Oakland, California, and it says, "Dear Jeff, this is Wendy from Ed Catmull's office. We got your letter. We would love to give you and your family a tour." I just looked at my phone and said, shut up, it actually works, right? So then I called and we kind of arranged the trip, but you're still thinking, is this actually gonna happen? This isn't gonna happen. So we pull up to the Pixar gates, fast forward to June, we fast forward to this moment, and there are the Pixar gates. If you've ever seen the picture of their studio, that's, in fact, Steve Jobs created the sign that we drive up to, and there's a security guard, and we pull up, and I'm thinking, he's not gonna believe this, and so I'm like, it's the Henderson family from Swanee, Georgia, here to tour Pixar. And he didn't smile. And I'm like, oh no, my kids are not gonna ever let me live this down. And then he smiled and said, "Welcome, Henderson family from Swanee, Georgia. We've been expecting you. We're so glad you're here." They gave us these name badges that said "strangers from the outside." I love that. We got to tour the whole area. They gave us a tour of everything. I don't know. Maybe it's because we've got this Southern hospitality thing in us, this twang in our voice. But apparently they liked us, and they said, "Okay, we're going to do something that we normally don't do. We're going to take you backstage to the animation studios, and we're going to let you see a current movie that they're working on." It was a movie that they were working on at the time called Coco. It's since come out about this past Thanksgiving. They were working on this movie while we were touring it. We had to sign a non-disclosure agreement that says if you tell anybody about Coco, we can kill you, which was a little alarming to sign that document. We get to see where Steve Jobs' office was when he worked at Pixar. It was amazing. But my favorite moment is when we're walking through Pixar, my daughter pulls aside me and says, "Dad, this is so cool." Y'all, I stopped being cool with my daughter 15 years ago. And I thought, oh, I'm so glad I listened to this voice and not this voice. Now, do you know what? You know what happens when I ask big? I get a lot of no's. That's okay. I'm just looking for a few yeses. And I can't get to the yeses unless I work through some no's. Let me tell you a no that's kind of local for you. A few years ago, I read Warren Buffett's autobiography. Loved it. So I wrote him a letter. Said, "Dear Mr. Buffett, I'm a pastor, and I'm not asking you for money, but I have 3 questions I would like to ask you. I will fly out on my own money for 15 minutes. We'll set my timer on your desk. I just want to ask you 15 minutes. I'll leave. You'll never hear from me again." I get a letter, after writing this letter, I get a letter from Warren Buffett that says, "Dear Jeff, no." But I have a letter from Warren Buffett, and maybe you don't. But last night, Dustin was saying on the way in, he was like, Warren Buffett lives around here somewhere. And I'm like, whoa, tell me where, okay? Now, recently I came out with this book and I was I was praying about this book. I said, God, I believe in this message. I need a breakthrough. And I felt like God said, send the book to Oprah. I think it was God. I don't know. But I'm like, I don't know Oprah. So you know what I've been doing the last 3 weeks? This is real recent. I've been asking people if they know Oprah. By the way, does anybody here know Oprah? No, okay. So let me tell you what happens. Just by asking this question, I put it on LinkedIn the other day. I said, hey, I need to get this book to Oprah because I think this message of 4 she would resonate with. I have gotten some of the most amazing, I now know the guy that flies her private jet. I don't know if that means anything, but if you need to know him, I know who that is now. But on Thursday of this week, I was in Nashville. I was doing a podcast with a guy. I wasn't quite sure who he was, but he wanted to do a podcast about the book. That's great. And he mentions to me, he goes, some of the things I've done in my career, he goes, I launched Wheel of Fortune. I'm like, oh, okay, I know that. I launched Jeopardy. I've heard of that. And I launched the Oprah Show. Excuse me? He said, yeah, I launched the Oprah Show. I said, okay, you're going to think this is crazy, but the other day I was praying and I asked God for a breakthrough because I want to ask big, and God told me to send the book to Oprah. Can you give the book to Oprah? And he goes, well, I've asked Oprah for 4 things in my life. If your book's good, I'll make it number 5. So that's where I am right now, all right? So if y'all want to pray for him, pray for me, pray that this guy likes the book, okay? Because I sent him the audio book on Friday, and he said, if I like the book, I'll get it to Oprah. My reason is, hey, if he doesn't like the book, that's okay. I'm still going to find Oprah, by the way. You know why? Because I've got to remain inspired. Because when I'm inspired, I become a better leader, a better dad, a better husband, a better me. So what do you want to be known for, and what are you known for? And I'll close with this picture. Here's what's at stake for us as church leaders. It's this group of people right here. The next generation. I want to raise up a next generation that understands that when it comes to the church has the greatest message the world has ever known, and that the church is known more for what it's for than what it's against. Are there some things that the church should be against? Absolutely. But I think what we're known for, should be known for, is to be more known for who and what we're for. And so one of the reasons I wanted to come out here is just to encourage you, especially students, nonprofit leaders, pastors, business leaders. This is a huge opportunity. But if you forget all the organizational things, use these 2 questions to grow you. Because one of the things I've understood about growing organizations is that growing organizations and thriving organizations have growing, thriving people. You can't separate the 2. And when an organization has growing, thriving people, just give it time. That church, that nonprofit, that organization will have a growing, thriving organization. That's how this works. So, thank you for being here. Pray for the Falcons. We need all the help we can get. Dustin, I'll hand it back to you.
And Jeff will be hanging out for a little bit as well if you want to just talk to him afterwards. Students at 2 o'clock, Jeff will be available just for you guys as well over in the preaching lab if you guys want to take some questions over there. I do want to let you know about some things that are going on coming up here at the Institute. In February, we have Katie Cole is going to be with us, and I don't have the exact date. So Katie is talking about, there she is, February 10th. She's going to be talking about developing female leaders. I know this is such a pressing issue for the church today and something that we definitely want to invite you back for. Mark your calendars on that, and we'll get more information to you about it soon. But let me go ahead and get you guys out of here, and let's just go ahead and pray as we close, and we will pray for Oprah while we're at it, all right? So, Father, we are just so grateful to be reminded that you are a God that is for us, God that believes in us, God that invests in us. And we pray, Lord, that as we take this message out to the world, that you would just continue to inspire us, help us to step forward in faith, not be held back by fear when we have those 2 voices in our head. We're so grateful for Jeff and his message. We pray your blessing upon him as this book is heard before people that you have laid on his heart as well. And we pray, Lord, that you would open those doors and that you would bless him incredibly through that. Thank you for this time we've had together. In Christ's name, amen.